Hey guys, Space Marine 658 here. Today we're going to be going over starting quests as well as sort of linking quests together to kind of make a cohesive quest line. So we're going to look at some other options here to make adding tags for quests a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and get started here. So first thing we're going to want to do is go into our actual character here. So right here at the beginning of play, we added this quest. Now this is great for, testing and stuff, but we're going to want to actually add this quest as part of our starting quests, right? So let's actually go remove that, and then we're going to go, so we have this temp, and this is just that initial quest one, right? So let's go to our quest tag, and what we're going to want to do is this component, we're going to want to add a custom event, and we'll call this start quests. Now the reason why we're making this custom event rather than on begin play is because if you're doing any kind of saving or loading, you're going to want to actually load whatever quests and information they have. But if you're starting from the very beginning, you can do the start quests kind of section. So what we're going to do is grab our starting quests. Now this is going to be all of our tags. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing we did here where we're adding a quest, but we're just doing it via a for loop. So we do for each loop. So when we start, we're going to do starting quests. And for each of these, we're just going to add quest. And go here. All right, and it's pretty much as simple as that. Now in our starting quest, we don't actually have anything, so we'll go ahead and throw in our first quest. Now, basically, depending on how you want to do this, there's a few different ways you can do this. You can manually enter in all this information, which could be a little bit of a pain. But since we've already set up our game instance with our quest level 1, and we know that these are the first two quests we're going to want, we can actually access this information from within our quest tracker, right? So what we can say is, hey, we need this information to set up our starting quest. So how do we actually get that information? Well, we could pull in our game instance and access it manually, but I don't like to do that. Instead, I prefer to access this stuff through an interface. So let's go ahead and set up that interface. So if you go ahead and right click, you go to Blueprint class, and you can just type in Blueprint interface for if I can spell. Oh, that's right. I have a plugin that adds that in default Unreal Engine. What you actually want to do is go Blueprint interface. And we'll call this a BPI, Blueprint interface. And we'll say, since we're going to use this to access probably more than just the quests, we'll just call this our game instance interface. And our first function here is just going to be get starting quests. And we're going to have an input here, an output here. This is what's going to actually return it. So we'll just say quests, and we'll change this to gameplay tag container. Actually, how do we store these? Let's double check and make sure we're pulling these correctly. So we store these as squest, so an array of these structs. So actually we'll do squest, and we'll just make this an array. Compile and save. All right, so this is going to return our starting quests. In fact, let's just rename this to be starting quests. That way it's very clear if anyone follows up behind us, how to access that information. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to actually add the interface here because this needs to implement the interface. So what does that mean? Interfaces work in two ways. There's the message portion, which is just anywhere from within your game you can say, hey, give me this information or do this thing. And then you have the actual interface side, the implementation side. So what that'll do is, let's say you got your player, you have an interface to an enemy. Your interface, you tell the enemy, take damage. That's great, but if your enemy doesn't implement that interface, it's not going to do anything. The cool thing about that is that means that you can very generically use it and just implement it in different ways on the classes that it's affecting, but it means you need to make sure you implement it, or at least have error handling by checking, does this implement this interface? If not, you probably want to throw an error or something like that. So what we'll do is we'll go to this implemented interfaces, and we'll type in our BPI, and we have our game instance interface, and that's going to give us over here a section called interfaces. And if you double click on this, it'll show you the actual function. So this is where when that message gets called, this game instance is going to actually return an array of starting quests. Well, now the question comes in, is up to you. How do you want to handle this? Now you could just send back all of these. If these are all going to be quests you want your player to start with by default, these are all the available quests to your player. Or you could split them off. You could have this be like, maybe you only give them the first one, right? So let's grab this. And let's say for my example, I'm just going to give them the first one. Well, we're going to have to make an array. So we get the 0 and we make an array. Now, if you want to do, all of them, you could do that. If you want to split it off, say duplicate and make, a starting quest section versus available quest, you could also do that as well. It's kind of up to you at this point as far as design goes. So we'll start off with this. So what this is going to do is we come over to our quest tracker. We're going to get a function called get game instance. And the cool thing, the reason why we're using our game instance is this lives throughout the entire lifetime of the game. So from the initialization of your game, from the moment it starts up, so there's actually a function in here called init. Actually, it's in the overrides. Yeah, it's in the overrides. So you have your init, network error, shutdown, travel error, and then of course our interface. So as long as the game is running, this object is alive. So the cool thing is that you can store a lot of stuff, you can do a lot of stuff with it, and you can handle all of your saving and loading in here, which is what we're going to eventually do. This won't live here forever. Eventually this will move into an actual save file, but that'll be real easy to do once we get it. This will be what we call a stand-in variable. So once we actually get the saving set up, we'll load the saved quest level 1 items from here. That way we can kind of track, what's completed, what's not in an individual save game. But yeah, and we'll talk about error handling and things like that. But so we've got our game instance, and what we're going to want to do is pull off of here and that message we talked about, right? We want to get starting quests. And all that does is this sends a message to our game instance, no matter what it may be. And it's going to say, give me my starting quests. And we can pull that off and we can set that here. Now there's a few different ways to do this. If we do it like this, we add these quests. This will actually still be empty. For a single quest, it's probably fine. But what I like to do, since we are going to be setting up to work with multiple different quests, in case you want to set it up that way, is you can just do this. Now what will happen is, you're adding all of these quests to the available quests because they're in the starting. But if in the future, you want to do something differently, so maybe you don't want to add them all right at the beginning, maybe you only want to add the very first one, then you can leave the rest of the starting quests in here and then add those as needed. All right, so this is relatively straightforward. So we've got all of our starting quest stuff being added here, right? So now we need to actually call the start quests. Now, depending on how you want to do this, there's a few different ways. The way I usually prefer to do it is once you got your saving and loading, you're going to call this function and have it start on your player character. What we'll do is for now, since we're just doing it like this, we will just say, grab our AC quest tracker, start quests, and this will be good for us for now until we actually get our saving and loading set up. So now we're going to want to do to actually link quests together is a couple of things. If we come into our actual quest tracker, right, where we're doing the quest completed, instead of just immediately removing all the active quests and stuff, we're going to want to do a couple of things. First, we're going to want to actually take our active quest and break out here. And we're going to get linked quests. Now, to actually get these linked quests, because right now we just have a reference to tags, right? So what we need to do is go find all of the quests that have this tag. Now, the easiest way to do this is we're going to come back into our game instance, right? So you can see here, we have a couple of things. So let me open this up. So our link quest right here is actually linked to quest 2, which we don't pull in, right? Because our starting quest, we only pull in quest 1. So actually get access to this quest 2, it's relatively straightforward in that we're going to just do another function here. And we're going to call this get quest by tag. And we're going to have an input and an output. That first input is going to just be a gameplay tag. And we're going to just make this a single. In theory, you could pass in an array, but I like to do these in a for loop so you can pull in however many or however few you want. And we're going to call this tag to get. And we're going to return an sQuest struct. And this is just going to be returned quests, because these are unique identifiers, right? So you want to make sure that you're only returning one at a time when you're doing a one-for-one. If you're returning multiple, then of course you'd want multiple. But yeah. Let's go into here, and we're going to want to implement that interface. So we're going to want to go and get the tag. So if we grab this and do a for each loop, we'll actually do a for each loop with break, because then we're not actually looping through once we're actually completely done. So we come over here and we basically just want to break our quest and go, okay, looking for ones with the same UUID tag. Does this have a matching tag? So let's actually hide all unconnected pins. Bring this up here. And we'll do a branch. Once we have a valid matching one, what we're going to want to do is promote this to a local variable. Now what this does is local variables are only stored inside of the actual function they're currently working. So they get cleared basically every time the function is done. But they're great for storing information on a temporary basis, just to make sure that you have access to that elsewhere. So what we're going to do is on this local variable, which we'll just call found quest. And when it hits true, we're going to actually break our loop here. So let's do a couple of these. Yeah, right now, a couple of my plugins are broken until I get those fixed. So you don't see my fancy straight lines. So I apologize for that. You should have that fixed by next time. And then once it's broken, we're going to come down to our completed. And what we're going to want to do here, though, is you may not get a quest back, right? Let's say you search for a tag that doesn't actually exist. How do we return an error here? Well, unfortunately, that's going to be a little bit harder just because of the nature of what we're doing. But what we can do is we can put a standby in and go found quest. And we will do get found quest. And let's just say break. And we'll just check if the UID tag is equal to none. Because if it's equal to none, that means that we didn't actually find anything. So we'll have a branch. And we're going to have this. And now what we can do is we actually add another return here. So on our outputs, if we come back to our interface, we're going to actually add a Boolean and just call this found quest. And we'll move this up to the top. So Booleans are better at the top because they're going to go straight into the branch. And so, oh, that's right. I probably should have checked. Our local variable actually shares the name with this return node. So it's going to act a little funky. What we're going to do is just rename this slightly. And we'll say found quest item. And then compile. That'll fix that. And so what we want to do is a true or false. So did we find a quest or not? If we did find a quest, then we'll mark found quest as true, and we'll actually just plug this in right here, or you can copy paste it to make it look a little bit cleaner. If it's false, so we didn't actually find any quest item, then we'll just return false here at the bottom. And what that'll allow you to do is do some error handling, so that way on the front end you can kind of handle that however you need to. Like if you didn't find a quest, maybe throw a pop-up error saying quest not found, error, number 48 or something. That way players can report that error and help you find those missing quests. All right. So with this, we're going to be able to come back into our quest tracker. Now what we're going to want to do is for each of our linked quests as part of our system here, we're going to want to find those quests. So first we do a for each loop, right? Depending on how many we have. And then do a get quest by tag. And move these out of the way. If a quest is found by that tag, then we're going to have this returned quest, right? So let's do this. So this is our return quest. So this is just going to be added as a quest because we may not want to activate it immediately because it'll activate it if we don't have any quests active. So if it's found, we add the quest. And what this will do is it'll loop through every single linked quest here in our questing, which we can hide all these. So we don't need all that. And it'll go ahead and make sure that we have all of those available. And let's actually clean this up just a little bit because it's starting to get a little spaghetti codey, which I absolutely despise. So let's do this. Then we can remove these. There we go. So to make it a little cleaner, we come in, we add our unique completed quests. So let's do this. So our completed quests. And then we're going to go and grab all of our linked quests and add those. So we'll make this add check for linked quests. Now, after we've completed our check for linked quests, we're going to want to come and actually remove the current active quest. Now, the question is, you could do this before in a bit of a roundabout way by like saving the active quest. It depends on how you want to do it. If you want to automatically activate a quest, then I would say you probably want to remove it before, which that's what we're going to go ahead and do. So what we'll do is we will go over here and we're actually going to promote this to a local variable, and we'll call this our recently completed quest. And that will be here, and we'll just use this instead of the active quests for all the things that we're going to do after this part. So let's remove that and plug that in here. And that allows us to make it a little bit neater right there. And let's separate these out so we can clean that up a little bit. So we've added our completed quest. Let's go ahead and then remove the current active quest since that's been completed. And in theory, some of these you could probably break down into individual functions. So for example, like me personally, I would probably make this itself a function. Very simple, just have it be like, remove active quest. But it's up to you. One thing I sometimes will do is wait until I have like fully broken down the different chunks and then sort of break it down into functions depending on what I actually need. This probably could be fine as one full thing because quest completed is a pretty important function. So this could just be one single function, but sometimes I like to break it down a little further. All right. So now we go ahead and go, so we need a target here. So our gameplay inst, which we actually, let me get gameplay, or get game instance, sorry. We need to make sure we have that referenced here so we can get our quest by tag, and let's move these around. All right. So as you can see, we come in here for our for loop. We're grabbing from our recently completed quests, we're grabbing all of our linked quests and we're going and adding it. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like, make sure that's all working. So if we go to our current game instance, come back here. So quest 1, we basically link to quest 2. And then in quest 2, this is where we actually handle, this is our final quest, right? In theory. And we have a required quest here. Now, we'll talk a little bit about required quests in a minute and if we want to add them or not, and how that actually works. So let's actually go to here. Now, to make sure this is all working correctly, what we're going to want to do is on quest completed, we'll just print out the next quest essentially being added. Actually, yeah, easier way. Here, when we're adding and activating a quest, we'll just print off the name of that quest. So we should see when we first start up, we'll get our first quest, and then once we finish that one and start the next one, we'll get the next quest. All right, you can see we have quest 1. If we walk up here, we've gotten this, but as you can see, it didn't seem to complete. So the question is, why is that? Why did we only get the first one but not the second one? Well, debugging is really easy now that we have our first person character. So let's go ahead and go to our quest tracker and take a look at our active quest. So let's go, we know we got quest 1, we go hit, it gets emptied out, right? But we're not actually, it doesn't seem to have activated correctly, right? So how do we actually fix that? How do we check that? One thing you can do, very easy thing, is in this add quest, we'll just go ahead and add a breakpoint. And it'll trigger for the first quest, right? So we know, okay, this is being added correctly. Let's hit continue with this execution. So that brings us back here. We hit this. So it's not adding that second quest. Well, the question is, why is it not adding that second quest? So we know that this part is being added correctly. So we're coming in here and we're checking our objectives. Objectives completed, quest completed. We know that this part's getting done correctly because this is all getting correctly. So let's go here. We're going to be for looping through this and figure out why it's not actually giving us what we want. So as you can see here, it's saying we've got this quest, we've got these gameplay tags, we've got this UUID tag, we've got our linked tags, right? So the question is, why are we not getting our next step? Let's move forward and see. So what we're doing is we're sending in through this for each loop a tag to get. So let's step into this. And the tag that we're trying to get is quest 2. That all looks good so far. And he goes, okay, you know, it looks like the UID of quest, because we got quest level 1, we got 2 different ones, right? So it's saying the first one doesn't match. So it's going to go through and it's going to move on to our next one. It's going to go, okay, the second one matches. So we found a quest item. So we're going to go through our break. We're going to come down here and it's going to go, hey, do we have a UUID on the found quest item? Which we should, because we got this, right? So we got our UUID. Oh, but what's this? It's returning false. Well, it looks like because we've put this in slightly incorrectly. That was a little bit intentional because I want to show you how to walk through with breakpoints. But essentially, you got to be careful when you're looking at these UUIDs and things like that. See, we're saying, is this equal to none? Well, we don't want to be returning a quest item if it's equal to none. So we actually want to do the opposite. So we just do a not Boolean. And that will be correct now. But yeah, that's how you basically walk through this quest system using the breakpoints. It's a super handy way. So let's go ahead and start. Now we should see we got quest 1. Boop. Now we have quest 2. And if we go ahead and tab out over here, we go over here to our quest tracker. We should now see, yep. Let me make sure I can see because I have my second screen up. There you go. Yep. So we got our quest 2. We got all of our different stuff from quest 2. And so that's very simple quest chaining. And from there, of course, you can add additional quests as you like. You can even have multiple quests here added, depending on how you want to have that part set up. But yeah, I think that'll be it for me today. My mouth is still kind of hurting from the dental surgery, but next week we're going to cover, required quests, and we're going to actually get started on UI, showing that stuff off. If you have any questions, definitely leave them down in the description below, in the comments below. But otherwise, good luck and good hunting.